rumors flew that Derrick Henry might be going to the Eagles. However, that's been put to rest over the last 24 hours. Not a lot of rumblings regarding the landing spot for Derrick Henry. However, this is not the first time this offseason that we've heard rumors that Derrick Henry could be moved and that there's a changing of the guard in Tennessee. Frankly, Dan, I think this Tennessee offense is an absolute mess. And if they're going to move on from Derrick Henry, they should just get as much as they can for him and draft capital for the future. And if they're going to do that, we're going to talk about Ryan Tannehill in a little bit, but it's almost the same conversation. Get as much as you can, because what is the direction of this team when the center of the offense is around an aged running back and your leading receiver in receiving yards from last year is what, Robert Woods? It's pretty bad. Treylon Burks had 440 receiving yards last year. Austin Hooper, 400 something receiving. It's a bad look and a bad offense. I don't know what to make of this Derrick Henry news. Is there going to be some Derrick Henry movement this week?
Yeah, I think the most likely outcome is that it's honestly business as usual in Tennessee. And they keep Derrick Henry, they keep Ryan Tannehill, and they try to add another pass catcher. You can just as easily turn things around a little bit and say, hey, Chig Okonkwo, he really started coming on towards the end of the year. It was good to see that. Treylon Burks got hurt, so he was out for most of the games. When he was in there, he was looking pretty good, other than when, of course, Malik Willis was throwing the ball, which was also a problem. When you finished off your season with Malik Willis and Josh Dobbs playing quarterback for you, you're not going to see stellar receiving numbers. So honestly, there's a big part of me that says, I don't know why the Titans, looking around at the rest of their division, they got the Jags to worry about and not much else. Why wouldn't they run it back with Tannehill and Henry and everything else? I think the only thing that maybe throws a fly in that ointment is if they are able to get one of these young quarterbacks in this draft that they feel real good about and that they feel is ready to start this year, then maybe Tannehill is gone. And then maybe they even think about sending Henry on his way, though I could see that going either way. But otherwise, even if they get, let's say they get Anthony Richardson, they're probably going to want to redshirt him for a year, so they keep Tannehill. They keep running Derrick Henry out there. And again, that's another way that we just have another year of the same thing. So I love where Derrick Henry is going in drafts. I think he's cheap.
Absolutely.
I have where do you have him on best ball or in underdog right now?
So if let me pull up on bestbellfantasy.com. I do have my best ball rankings up, and for running backs, I have Derrick Henry as my running back 3, and I'm getting him in the end of the second round, beginning of the third round. And I know that that's not a popular opinion because there's been a lot of concerns about Derrick Henry, but I have him ahead of Bijan. I had him ahead of Jonathan Taylor. I have him ahead of Saquon. I have him ahead of Nick Chubb and Kenneth Walker and Breece Hall. The only 2 running backs he's behind for me right now are Christian McCaffrey and Austin Eckler. And I'm willing to move Eckler down depending upon what we get in the draft for the Chargers. Obviously, things can change, but for right now, you can't ignore what Derrick Henry did last year. He led all running backs in rate of top 5 weeks. 31.4% of his weeks were top 5. The next closest was Austin Eckler at 22. Okay, there's just such a tier gap between Derrick Henry accessing these elite games. McCaffrey was at 20% last year, and we have to be a little concerned about him being on San Francisco, sharing with Debo, sharing with Elijah Mitchell. So there are other concerns, but Derrick Henry was able to hold up for 16 of 17 games with 5 screws in his foot last year. And why can't he do it again this year? The reality is I think I agree with you, Dan. Derrick Henry is, I think, the most underrated running back in the first 3 rounds.
Yeah, I can't argue with that. Running back 3.
Spicy, but fine.
It's spicy, but
it just means I'm going to get a lot of Derrick Henry.
Yeah. Yeah. How am I going to sit here and say, you're wrong, Bradley? It's definitely, he could be running back 1. We've seen it. And he doesn't have a lot of mileage for a 29-year-old running back. He was very lightly used early in his career, so he doesn't have a ton of mileage on his odometer. And so I think he's going to probably, and he's also just a different kind of back. He's a guy who delivers hits more than he takes hits, and I think that makes a big difference too. And the one thing we know, as you pointed out, if he is in the game, he is going to end up in your starting lineup in best ball. It's just almost a sure thing, and those are the kind of players you want, because even with a back end one, they're going to spend what, a third to a half of their, probably about a third of their weeks out of your starting lineup, because they'll have an 8-point game or a 9-point game or something like that. You'll find a couple of running backs that end up having better outputs than that on your roster somewhere. Henry's that one guy that just really is in your lineup all the time. Yeah, love the value.
He was my second highest rated best ball value last year, only behind McCaffrey. McCaffrey just had a higher floor, but Henry was able to access ceilings that almost no other running back was able to. Those top 5 weeks are so precious for your best ball leagues. And if you're able to get those, and you know that the offense is centered around Derrick Henry yet again, if Derrick Henry emerges from this week without being traded, without a significant back added as well. I know there's been some rumblings about Bijan Robinson added, but literally things couldn't get any worse for the Tennessee Titans offense in some of those games. As you mentioned, Malik Willis, Josh Dobbs, the reality is that Derrick Henry I think still has a lot of juice.
Yeah. Totally. And we were talking about, before the show started, we were talking about viewing players by the shape of the curve of their likely outcomes. And Derrick Henry is just such a huge right-tailed curve. It's like almost all, it's either he's hurt or he's giving you an extreme right tail week, almost every week.
And that's why I've been drafting so much of him at the end of the second round, beginning of the third round, in all these like the FFPC or the drafters, or even in some of the underdog drafts. It's just auto click because I have him at running back 3 right now, and I'm not one to reach very far for players. Just let them come to me at ADP. I love them, and I love that value. So give me Derrick Henry all the time at the end of round 2, beginning of round 3.